You're watching Gearz.
You know, one of the main reasons that people build cars and trucks is that they want to create something with their own two hands that's a little bit different than what anybody else has got. And they know that if they spend a little bit of time and a little bit of money, eventually they're going to end up with something really cool. But this is the end of the project. The beginning of the project doesn't usually look like this, and you can't always find the parts that you need out of a catalog. Sometimes you got to go hunting to get the stuff you need. So we're about to take you on one of those hunts because we need a vintage Jaguar engine to go in an upcoming project. And I've talked to a guy that says he's got a couple vehicles that might fill the bill, so we're going to go see what he's got. So grab your tools. We're about to do some automotive archaeology. Buried deep in the woods in the middle of nowhere in northern Alabama sit hundreds of cars in various stages of neglect. Now the owner's been packing them away for a number of years, and there's some pretty cool stuff hidden in the trees. There were Lincolns, Nashes, Packards. Man, they just don't build cars like this anymore. Look at this Packard. Look at this Packard emblem, man. You just sell the cars, right? Not parts?
Right.
You sure? No parts?
Depends how many parts you need off the car.
And all kinds of other things. Some look like they'd still run. Others were total basket cases. But as tempting as they were, all right, you got two of them. What do you want for the pair? That's not why we were there. It'll take an act of Congress to get that thing up. So, exercising tremendous willpower, we kept looking until we found what we came for. Some old Jaguar sedans. The first car looked to be an early 60s Mark II, and it was about 80% there and had quite a bit of rust. But that didn't matter, because it was the engine we were interested in. That's one of the best looking engines ever done, though. And it appeared to be fairly intact. Carburetors were there, and it was either a 3.4 or 3.8 liter, depending on the year. So you got the pump being run right off the back of the generator. What? This one definitely has potential. That's old school, man. That's really different. Cool. The second Jag was a different story. Let's see what we got over here. Because not only was the car pretty much stripped, so was the engine. No, this is not the way to buy a Jag engine. However, the third car was a 66 Mark X that's got the bigger 4.2 engine. And when we popped the hood and saw those 3 SU carburetors, we knew this was the one to get. I like those 3 carburetors, you know that.
Absolutely. Those are extra.
Extra as in free extra? You're throwing them in or what? Because this is basically the same engine the Jaguar put in the E-Type sports car. Once a deal was made, we loaded the car up and headed home. And as soon as we got it inside the shop, we started tearing it apart.
Now, quick tip. Brought to you by E3 Spark Plugs. Born to burn.
When you buy a donor vehicle, obviously there's a lot of parts on here that you want. That's why you bought it. But that doesn't mean you can't benefit from some of the other parts on the vehicle. So when you're pulling off the parts you want, in this case the engine, make sure you keep an eye out for other things that might be able to help you out, like air conditioning units and power steering and radiators and motor mounts and brackets. Anything that would keep you from having to buy a part new, which on a Jaguar, would be kind of expensive. Also, when you're taking off parts you're not going to use, make sure you don't destroy them, because once you've got what you want, you can sell the rest of the vehicle to the next parts guy. And he ain't going to buy it if you've destroyed all the good stuff. And if you do this right, you might even get the parts that you want for nothing, or you might even put some money in your pocket. If you'd like to learn more tips to make your life easier in the shop, check out the tips page on the website. With everything unhooked from the top, the next step was to get under the car to disconnect the drive shaft, the exhaust, and any other linkage or lines. From there, it was on to the engine hoist, where after some pushing and shoving, the old Jaguar gave up its engine and transmission without too much fuss. And now that we've got it out, we're going to strip it down and get rid of all the stuff we're not going to use, and to get a better idea of what we've actually got here. So, first we're going to pull off the transmission. And then remove the old accessories like the air conditioning compressor, the power steering pump, and the alternator, and we'll set those aside as swap meet material. And that is pretty much it. Everything from here on out is either going to be rebuilt or reused after a thorough cleanup. And as you can see, there is a lot of cleanup to do here. But that's the fun about pulling parts out of a junkyard car. You're going to find stuff that you can't get just anywhere else. You're not going to find this engine brand new in a crate. You're going to have to pull it out of a junkyard and rebuild it. And you're going to get really dirty doing it. And that is the fun of building a hot rod. You know, one of the most challenging things about building or restoring a vehicle are all those little things that sneak up and catch you by surprise. Matter of fact, that's one of the main reasons that most first-time builders get discouraged and give up on a project. Because it's really easy to get excited about an engine swap or about a paint job or about installing an interior, but it's also easy to overlook putting in the wiring harness or fitting door panels or installing weather stripping. And these are all integral parts of building or restoring a vehicle. So right now, we are going to show you what it takes to build or restore a door. For example, this is an original door off of a mid-'80s Chevy pickup. And as you can see, it's pretty typical of what you'll find in a junkyard or on a project vehicle. It's got a lot of damage, got a lot of rust on it. Fortunately, everything that you're going to need to completely restore a door on most trucks is available from LMC Truck, including a completely new door shell. Now, whether you're restoring an old door or completely rebuilding one from new, the first thing you got to do is strip the door, take everything out of it, fit it on the vehicle, do your body work so everything's fitting right, then you can start assembling the door. Here's how to do it. Now, as you can see, there is a lot that goes into a door. There's big stuff like glass and regulators, but there's also a lot of small stuff and brackets and hardware that serve a specific purpose. So it can be a little overwhelming. So the best thing to do is to break it into 3 categories. The first being all the internal mechanical stuff, the latches, the hinges, the regulator. The second category is the glass, the weather stripping, the window channel. And then the third is the door panels, the armrests, the trim, everything that goes on the outside of the door. Okay, once it's laid out, the first thing to go in is the mechanical stuff, like the door locks and the latches, because they usually mount back behind everything else. The latch assembly is connected to the interior and exterior handles with special rods, and it's important to get those working right before you move on. The upper and lower hinges will get their final adjustment when the door is on the vehicle. So we'll just get them in place for now. All right, the next area we're going to deal with are parts that have to do with the windows and the weather stripping. And replacing the door glass is always a good idea. Replacing the weather stripping is a must. And when it comes to the vent windows, you got some choices. You can either get the parts to restore your original piece, or you can get the whole thing brand new right from LMC. Now, since these are usually all beat up after years of abuse, and replacing that rubber is pretty difficult, getting the whole unit's a pretty smart thing to do. First, we'll install the new metal window channel, followed by the outer door weather stripping and the window channel rubber. Then we'll install the glass into the new window bracket and slide the glass into the door and connect it to the actuator. Finally, we'll slide in the vent wing assembly and bolt it all in, making sure that the window rubber and the window is fitting in the window channel properly. And it's as tricky to do as it is to say. Okay, at this point, the guts are in the door. Now it's time to do something about covering this hole, which brings us to the door panel. Now, obviously, there was a lot of options available for these trucks over the years, and it's up to you to cut the door panel to fit your application. Fortunately, all the cutting templates are right in the plastic on the back side, so all you got to do is make some holes. So we'll load up our door panel with the trim and the power window and door lock switches, and finally install the door panel. And that is it. It's hard to believe that all the parts that were on this table went into that single door. Now, I know it seems there's a lot to this, and there is, but it's something that has to be done, and it's something you can do. So don't pay somebody to do this for you. Get out there and do it yourself. You know, if you've been around the automotive world for any time at all, you know that vintage hot rods play a huge part in the image and the history of motorsports. And there's just some things that people expect to see on a hot rod. One is a chopped top. Another is louvers. Then, of course, there's the side exhaust and the loud exhaust. And then there's the hot engine. There's the vibrant paint. And then, of course, there's pinstriping. And when you mention pinstriping, there's one name that always comes up: Von Hot Rod. But just who is this Von Hot Rod guy and where'd he come from? That's what we're about to show you. How many pieces do you think you do a year? Von Hot Rod started out like most of us, hanging around shops and wrenching on cars. And before long, he developed quite a reputation as a builder and a racer in Southern California.
I was born into the industry, kind of one of those things where Dad was a sprint car driver, drag racer, and kind of destined to be in the industry. So I was a little kid that used to hand him wrenches. I remember handing him wrenches, and when I'd hand it to him, I'd always have a rag in my hand, and I'd clean them and make sure they're all chrome and polished and give them to him. It used to drive him nuts.
With a natural skill of building and pinstriping cars, it wasn't long before Von Hot Rod had one of the premier shops in California.
I started with this shop called Hot Rods. I named it after me, and we built, street rods, hot rods, and custom cars. And I've always had clothes made for me to match the shop. So people started asking me, well, where do you get this stuff? And I go, I just have it made for me. It's a little pricey. Well, would you make me one? I said, sure. So one went into one, 2, 3, 4, a dozen, and we just started doing clothes.
But as cool as that is, there was another thing that Von Hot Rod felt compelled to do, and it's not what you think.
A lot of guys will come up and talk to me where they won't go talk to a preacher guy, if you want to call it that, or a suit and tie guy. We start just talking about each other's lives, and then they find out that I'm a Christian man, and then they say, oh, I wish I could live that way, but I can't because I have this bad habit. And, we just get sharing with each other's lives, and it's really interesting. And that just opens another door of somebody learning about their lives, and again, learning about the industry, that there's guys out there that are Christian men or men of God, however you want to look at it, that are in this sports industry, that not just artists, but drivers and fabricators and welders and creators, they're all out there.
He may not have ended up as a missionary in a third world country, but Von Hot Rod brings a message of faith to hot rodders, drag racers, and car enthusiasts all around the world. And just so you know, that's the only guitar like it, so, no pressure.
Oh, okay.
In just a few short years, Von Hot Rod quickly became one of the most well-known pinstripers in the business, developing his own line of brushes and jewelry and other products, and eagerly putting his styling on everything from cars to shoes to, well, you name it.
A guy walks out and goes, hey, would you stripe something weird? I'm so, as long as it's not a weird body part, yeah, we're okay. He goes, okay, how about my glass eye? I said, as long as it's not in your head, I'll stripe it. So he pops his glass eye out, and I stripe the glass eye.
And all the time, he's never forgotten who he is and what he stands for, in spite of the crazy lifestyle and culture that's around him.
I'd go to somebody's house or garage or studio to stripe a car, and they'd always have a case of beer for me, but I didn't drink, or they'd have a bottle of wine, And that was the norm. That was what they were used to. And that's not putting a bad name on a pinstripe or anything like that. But that's just, everything was typecast. Everything was like that. And I just want to rep it that way because I know there's a kid like I was watching Ed Roth. Somebody's watching Von Hot Rod, so to speak. And I want to leave an impression with that kid that he thinks, well, if he can do it, so can I. You know, it's just, like I said, if we don't train the youth of today, you know, our industry dies down.
So, if you go to a hot rod show and you see a cool-looking pinstriper there with a long line of people wanting to get something pinstriped, you can pretty much figure it's Von Hot Rod, and you might as well just get in line because he's the real deal, both as a car guy and as a pinstriper and as a real person, and that's a cool combination.
Tool Tech, brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals.
You know, there's no doubt that tools make our lives much easier. Matter of fact, without the proper tools, most of what we do in here would not be possible. But in spite of that, there are some jobs that come up in a shop that it seems like there is no tool that will help you out. For example, removing a truck bed. Because it usually takes 4 or 5 guys to do it. You got to have some sort of dolly to put the bed on. Then you've got to have a lot of room to store the bed. Well, I'm about to show you a tool from Proline Tool and Supply called the Motor City Lift King, and it's going to completely change the way you think about removing a bed. Check it out. In the fully stored position, the Lift King only takes up about 3 feet of floor space and kind of looks like an engine hoist. That is until you start unfolding it. Then it takes on a look all its own. The long legs roll under the bed for support, and the rear support simply slides over the tailgate hinges. Then the lifting boom attaches under the inner edges of the bed sides. Now all you have to do is crank the handle, and the bed will lift right off the truck, allowing one person to not only remove the bed, but also push it around and get it out of the way. You can even work on the bed while it's on the lift, so there's no need for a separate dolly or a table. The Lift King will work on either long beds or short beds, and with special attachments, you can also put on tonneau covers or camper shells or doors or bumpers or pretty much anything heavy that needs to hang out over something. So if you've got a truck and you think you might want to take the bed off, you need to get yourself a Motor City Lift King. But be warned, everybody's going to want to borrow it from you. There's no doubt that converting a big American car into a hot street machine is really popular right now. And with guys wanting to add new wiring and air conditioning, well, converting that original steering column can be a little bit of a challenge, especially if you've got something a little different like a '64 Ford Falcon. Well, fortunately, I Did It is one step ahead of the game because they've come out with this retrofit column for a '64 Ford Falcon. And take a look at this. The tubing diameter is original size, so you can use the original mount up here in the dash. Then you've got a special floor mount to mount down here. The wiring is compatible with original wiring or aftermarket wiring. And then up here, the spline is original, so you can use an original steering wheel or an adapter and an aftermarket wheel. You also have the tilt option and all of the other goodies that come with an I Did It column. If you've got a '64 Ford Falcon, you need this column. If you've got a '65 or a Mustang or a Camaro or a Mopar, I Did It has probably got a direct fit column for your vehicle. All you've got to do is give them a call.
What are you working on? Brought to you by Woodward Fabrication, selling quality metalworking equipment since 1966.
Today's What Are You Working On comes from Adam Fisher from Winnetka, California, and his project is a late '70s Camaro that was passed back and forth between him and his friends as they traded it for vehicles and back and forth until finally, the third time Adam owned it, he decided he was going to build this car. Of course, it looked like this by then, but that's okay because the car had T-tops and that's all that Adam cared about. So, take a look. The first thing he did was completely strip the car and all the rust was repaired and everything was smoothed out, and then he painted it. The interior was also completely restored and put back together like a typical Camaro. But under the hood, that's where Adam took a big detour, because instead of the typical small block Chevy, take a look, he stuffed in a hot Buick Turbo V6. Now, I know a lot of you guys are thinking, a Buick in a Camaro? What the heck? Well, Adam says that once the car was finished, check this out. He jumped in it, fired it up, took it on a road trip from Chicago to California and had no problems whatsoever, except for people asking, why does your Camaro sound different? You gotta love it, man. So Adam, to recognize such a cool project, we hooked up with our buddies at Woodward Fab, and we are gonna give you one of these shrinker stretchers. This is a great tool for making areas around dog legs or around windows, any place where metal is rusted out. I'm sure you could have used that on that project. Also, we're going to give you one of our wiring books to help you with your wiring, and we're going to give you one of our new Gearz t-shirts. The first thing you need to do is get this dirty and get some holes in it. Also, finally, we're going to give you one of our new Sergeant Rock guitar picks, which is made out of World War II brass, which means you can really shred with that thing. Now, for the rest of you guys, if you want to get in on this, get your project featured on the show, you got to send stuff in to What Are You Working On at Gearz Nation, because everything we feature on the show, all the projects, come right off of Gearz Nation. Also, don't forget to check us out on Twitter and Facebook and all other forms of social media, because we've always got something cool going on there. All right, it's time for you to get out there and get into a project and do something with your own two hands. We'll see you next time.